I stand here before you today with a serious appeal. Bring back cruising to nowhere. Could be a short-term solution for ramping cruising back up again, but it's against the law. Kinda. In today's episode of the Lido Loca Cruise Show, I will tell you the torrid history of cruising to nowhere and ask the question, should we bring it back? Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. I'm Tony. I'm your host. Join me for the next few minutes as we talk about cruising. If you enjoyed that cruising content, please consider subscribing with the notification bell on. That way you don't miss out on any of these daily episodes. So first, let's define the term. What is a cruise to nowhere? Well, you're not actually going nowhere. You're going to sea. Like many sailors for centuries before you embark out onto the sea to become one. Okay, I'm just kidding. It's a cruise that doesn't have any ports. No port stops. So let's just take Miami, for example. A cruise to nowhere from Miami. Say it's a 4-day cruise. You leave Miami, the port of Miami. You go out into the Atlantic Ocean, or I guess if you went down and took a right, you could get into the Caribbean Sea. And you hang out there for 3 or 4 days. They open up the casinos. They open up the shops. It's one big party on the sea. And then you come back to Miami. So it's Miami to the sea to Miami, a.k.a. a cruise to nowhere. And a cruise to nowhere used to be a common occurrence in cruising. It was only in 2016 that they were slowed down. And they were slowed down not because any laws had changed, any policies had changed. They were slowed down because somebody else wanted to get into the cruise to nowhere business, and the government didn't like it. Let me tell you that story. First, let me tell you the policy that dictates why there can't be cruises to nowhere. The cruise lines, when they bring crew on board, they have to document them, and they have to document them in a way where they can go to foreign ports. This is handled by a D1 visa. The D1 visa is what Customs and Border Protections check when cruise ships make port in the United States. The D1 visa is tricky because it says the person holding the D1 visa, they are someone who is coming to the United States that will make contact with a foreign port. The challenge with the cruise to nowhere is the cruise to nowhere is seen as domestic travel. It's seen as United States to United States travel, and the D1 visa stipulates that the crew member must have some interaction with a foreign port. And this is why cruises to nowhere are a no-no. There are a lot of regulations and policies that the cruise line have to follow. The Jones Act is one that talks about crew members. There is also the Passengers Vessel Services Act of 1886. All of those things talk about ships when they come to the United States under a foreign flag. They have to follow some rules. And the big thing to remember is that all of these foreign flagged vessels, they cannot just go from one U.S. port to another. They have to stick a foreign port in there. And again, this is the big rub against the cruise to nowhere. But, and this is a big but, cruises to nowhere happened regularly through the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, all the way up to about 2015. Asian cruise line Genting wanted to get in on the cruise to nowhere business, and they started running a casino cruise out of Miami. They ran a casino cruise that was very popular. They would pick people up in Miami. They would take them out into the sea. They would open the casino. They would have a good time. And they wanted to expand that business to Port Everglades and to Port Canaveral. And that's when the people in those two ports said, hey, wait a minute. We don't want that. How can we prevent that? They pointed out very directly to Customs and Border Protection that these cruises to nowhere were in violation of the rules that were on the books. So instead of changing the rules, they pushed back into the cruising industry and basically put the kibosh on the cruise to nowhere. Interestingly enough, though, the cruise lines can ask for an exemption for the cruise to nowhere. That happened to us on our very first cruise. We were scheduled to leave Mobile, Alabama, go to Cozumel, come back to Mobile, Alabama. That's a good, legitimate cruise. But our cruise ship was broken. And so we could not go to Cozumel, and they asked for an exemption so that we could do a cruise to nowhere, go from Mobile, Alabama out into the sea, enjoy a few days at sea, and then come back to Mobile. Fortunately for us, they fixed the cruise ship, and we were able to go to Key West, Florida, which is still domestic travel. So they had to have an exemption for that. So these exemptions do exist. Now, there is another card that the cruise lines can play. Many cruise lines have their own private islands. The one thing I'm not sure of, though, is private islands are controlled by foreign governments. For example, the Perfect Day at Coco Cay is part of the Bahamas. So I don't know, at the end of the day, just because Royal Caribbean has the Perfect Day at Coco Cay, if they are able to just go there without permission of the Bahamas. I would assume that the Bahamian government has to give permission for the cruise ship to dock, even though that is Royal Caribbean's private island. Again, I haven't been able to find the answer to that. If anybody has any sourcing on that or any insight, that would be interesting to me. We've talked about it a lot in the cruising community, the Lido Loca cruising community. And, to me, the perfect thing would be send the cruise ship only to the private island in the beginning, again, so that it could be contained. So I say bring back the cruise to nowhere. I say maybe change the law, maybe make a carte blanche exemption for cruise lines, at least in the near future. I think this would be a great way to ramp up cruising again. Look, with the current situation that we have, nobody knows what's going to happen when cruising begins again. Nobody knows if there will be more outbreaks on cruise ships. And so as much of society starts to return to normal, as people step away from this shelter in place, step away from this social isolation and start to figure out how to practice social distancing in real time, cruise ships are going to be something that's heavily looked at. So I would say if there is any way that you could test it out, check it out before you go full board, I would do it. I think Cruise to Nowhere does that. So possibly an exemption for Cruising to Nowhere could get cruising going again in a controlled manner where the cruise lines could track and see what is actually going to happen next in these unknown circumstances. But would people cruise to nowhere? I put the question to the YouTube community and also to the Facebook community. Let me give you some poll results. Now, to be fair, I was a little late getting these polls out, so not the normal amount of sampling that we normally get. But if we look over at the Lido Loca cruising community, over 400 respondents, and overwhelmingly, people said they would do the cruise to nowhere if that was their only cruising option. Just a minority saying that they would only cruise if they could visit a port. And on YouTube, at the time of the recording, only 93 votes. 68% say they would cruise to nowhere. 32% said they would only cruise if they could visit a port. That's really been the biggest question for me. Once cruising starts up again, how quickly will people want to start cruising again? How long will they wait to see how things play out? Had a really good conversation with my friend Don from over at Don's Family Vacations about this. I'll link a video above if you want to see what Don and I said. But I kind of hold to the idea that I am a little bit wait and see. Now, I love cruising. I want cruising to come back strong. But for me, I'm in one of those risk situations where I wouldn't respond well to the virus. I'm in one of those risk categories. And so I'm super apprehensive. I want to see what the new processes are going to be. I want to see a couple cruises go off without a hitch so that I can have a better level of comfort. And I've heard people say, oh, you can't live your life in fear. I agree with that. To me, there's two extremes. There's the willy-nilly, I don't care about anything. I'm going to go on a cruise ship and whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And then there's the other thing that says, oh, I'm never going on a cruise ship again. This thing is the worst thing that's ever happened. Life will never resume to normal. All cruising's dead. I kind of try to live somewhere in the middle, right? I've got that free spirit where I want to go and try everything, but you got to temper that with wisdom a little bit. There's some crazy stuff going on in the world that the experts don't have the answers to. You can watch the experts disagree amongst themselves about what the right thing is to do, and I'm a lot less educated than those people. And so, I'm not willing just to say, well, I think I know enough to run out there and see if I can get this thing and survive it. But at the same time, I'm not going to stay in my house forever. So I think there is a balance there. I think there is some sort of happy medium. And for me, that would be waiting and seeing just a little bit as to what happens when cruising fires up again. But that's going to be different for everybody, and I respect everybody's decision to go and do and live their life the way they're going to live their life. I get asked the question, what would you do? And that's kind of my answer to what I would do. I'm going to wait and see a little bit, but I do have cruises scheduled, so it won't be that much of a waiting game. So what do you think? Should we bring back cruises to nowhere in the interim as cruising fires up again? Would you take a cruise to nowhere? Let's have a conversation in the comments. Thank you so much for watching the show today. Please show your support by hitting the like button. If you're so inclined, maybe share it out to somebody else that likes cruising. Appreciate everybody watching. This is Tony with Lido Loca, and until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido. Bye.